All right, Larry Krueger here from the Pig and a Pickle Krug Show with a little 49er video on this Thursday. And of course, check out Pig and a Pickle, two locations, Emeryville and Corte Madera. They're open 7 days a week from 11 a.m. till 8 p.m. or until they run out, and they do run out. So go say hi to Damon and Mary at Pig and a Pickle. Tell them that Krug sent you. Get some brisket chili, and enjoy Pig and a Pickle. And of course, this video is also brought to you by Aura, and we'll have a word from Aura in a minute. But let's talk all things Niners on this Thursday. The biggest story of the day is coming out of Jacksonville, where Buccaneers offensive coordinator Liam Cohen has been speaking with the Jaguars in person for their head coaching job. And according to reports, he's a key candidate to be the coach in Jacksonville. This is just a one day after he turned down a second interview. Now, could it have been that Trent Baalke was really the tipping point here? Because this is the timeline. Liam Cohen turned down Jacksonville's head coaching job, opting to stay at in a lucrative situation to remain the Tampa Bay Buccaneers offensive coordinator. Then Shad Khan responded by firing Trent Baalke as the general manager. And now Liam Cohen is back in Jacksonville talking to the Jaguars, and it's pretty obvious that he's their first choice. So this is huge news for the 49ers in their pursuit of Robert Saleh, who's slated to interview tomorrow in Jacksonville. He was flying in Jacksonville. Saleh was flying to Jacksonville today. He's supposed to meet with the Jaguars brass tomorrow. So very interesting. A little bit of a plot twist here as Liam Cohen, just days after agreeing to a massive contract extension in Tampa Bay, now potentially he could be the new head coach of the Jacksonville Jaguars, and it's a reversal. And he's in Jacksonville. According to the reports, he's meeting with the Jaguars. He's in their facility right now. He could have stayed with Tampa Bay. He had a deal on the table to make him the highest paid the NFL's highest paid offensive coordinator. Adam Schefter says the Buccaneers have had no contact today with Liam Cohen or his representation. The team has made multiple efforts to reach him and has not reached him. So Cohen, according to Schefter, is in Jacksonville discussing a deal to become the next head coach of the Jaguars. Ian Rappaport says coaching searches can get crazy. But this is a new one. Bucs agreed to an extension, but it hasn't been signed. No contract at all between Liam Cohen and the Bucs. The Jaguars situation changed dramatically after the firing of Trent Baalke, and now Cohen is in Jacksonville building discussion towards becoming the next head coach of the Jacksonville Jaguars. The deal is not done with the Jaguars, but for Liam Cohen to be in the building in Jacksonville speaking with the Jaguars brass about their head coaching job just days after agreeing to an extension to stay in Tampa, it's pretty clear that, there's no doubt that Liam Cohen is the favorite to be their next head coach in Jacksonville. Okay, why does this make sense? Why is this believable? Let's talk about it for a second. First of all, you got Trevor Lawrence there, and he's kind of regressed. And the thinking is that the Jaguars really would like to have an offensive coach that they bring in. They have a sizable investment in Trevor Lawrence. It hasn't worked out. It's been 4 years. It's time for him to start playing good football, and it's time for them to get an offensive coach there to help get it out of him. And I just don't know that Robert Saleh, is going to be that guy because he's a defensive coach. But Liam Cohen is considered to be a very strong offensive-minded coach. He did a really nice job in Tampa Bay. Look at the resurgence of Baker Mayfield in that offense, Bucky Irving. They really did a lot of things well in Tampa offensively this year. There were times where they looked like the most unstoppable offense in the league. So this makes sense. It's believable. Why? Because the Jaguars want an offensive coach, and it's believable that Liam Cohen probably said, you know what? I don't want any part of Trent Baalke. And if Trent Baalke's here, you know what? I'm not going to make you fire him. I'm just going to turn you down. And then Shad Khan, word got back to Shad Khan that it was probably connected to Baalke. So he fires Baalke, and now Liam Cohen could be the next head coach of the Jaguars. Here's the other reason why Cohen's move to stay in Tampa made no sense. Tampa was going to give him a nice big raise, but the highest paid coordinators in football, from what I can tell, make somewhere between $4.5 million and like $7 million annually, where the top paid head coaches could make double that. So you're going to take that kind of a haircut to stay in Tampa as the offensive coordinator. I mean, show me a guy whose wife isn't going to complain if you could have been making twice as much, but you chose not to. Somebody was going to offer you $14 million, but instead you said, no, I don't want $14 million. I'll take $7 million, and I'll stay in Tampa Bay as the offensive coordinator. So that never really made sense, and that's why you never see it. You never see guys who potentially could be head coaches ever go for coordinator positions. So it's because it's a big monetary step down to be a coordinator as opposed to a head coach. And so there's a lot of pressure to win, and the pressure is going to exist there whether you are making $15 million, $14 million, or $6 million, or $7 million. So you might as well make the most, and you might as well have the best job. And so it's rare that you see anybody stay in a coordinator position who actually had a head coaching offer in hand. And that's what Liam Cohen did yesterday. So it was bizarre to see. It was hard to explain. It made you think that, man, he doesn't want to be in Jacksonville for whatever reason. And so that's the latest. The latest is that the Liam Cohen to the Jags, being a done deal or it's dead, is now very much alive. And if Liam Cohen lands that deal, that means Robert Saleh most likely does not become a head coach. Now, there are other openings, but there's talk around the league that Dallas is either interested in Marty Schottenheimer's kid, Brian Schottenheimer, or possibly a reunion with Kellen Moore. Just looking at the odds, here are the latest odds on the head coaches. Kellen Moore is a minus 275 favorite to be the Cowboys' next head coach. Brian Schottenheimer's the next choice. Then Dion, Robert Saleh's plus 500, 5-1 on the Cowboys job. Even though there's been reports about Schottenheimer, we'll talk more about that in a second. The Raiders head coaching odds, Pete Carroll's minus 150, Todd Monken is plus 150, Liam Cohen is the third choice there at 4-1, Joe Brady's the fifth choice there at 5-1. Interesting on that list. Robert Saleh is 20-1 to get the Raiders job. The Saints head coaching job, Joe Brady is favored at plus 175. Darren Rizzi at plus 200, and Mike McCarthy also at plus 200 are in the running there in New Orleans, but Joe Brady's the favorite. And right now, according to this, now this was probably as of yesterday, Robert Saleh at plus 100 was the Jaguars' favorite. But as Liam Cohen was down at plus 1,400 at 14-1, but that was before he went to Jacksonville and is talking to the Jags. So I guarantee you, Liam Cohen is the betting favorite right now. But right now, so I would imagine Liam Cohen's going to jump Robert Saleh. But the odds I'm looking at say Robert Saleh at plus 100, Patrick Graham at plus 200, Joe Brady at plus 300, Kellen Moore at plus 550. They have Liam Cohen at 14-1 here. But I as I said, he's in Jacksonville talking to them. So that's a pretty good indication that it looks good that Liam Cohen's probably headed to Jacksonville and probably headed to Jacksonville as their first choice. Of any of the guys they could have had, it sounds like Liam Cohen is probably the guy that is their first choice. So we will see if there's more coming out on that, but that's the latest on that. Now, a couple other 49er notes. Mel Kiper Jr. is projecting the 49ers to draft Texas offensive tackle Kelvin Banks Jr. with the 11th pick overall. My draft plan today would be trade down from 11 a few spots and take Walter Nolan, the big defensive tackle from Ole Miss. That's how I'd start the draft, just because I really think defensive tackle is that's their need. That's where the 49ers really have a need, is that defensive tackle. And if they could get a guy like Walter Nolan, I think that would be a tremendous start to their draft. If they could trade back a few spots, get a couple extra picks, and then take Walter Nolan, the big defensive tackle out of Ole Miss, who I believe led the SEC this year in tackles for loss. All right, let's talk a little bit about Brock Purdy. A lot of the people out there saying that, that the quarterbacks in the playoffs are better than Brock. It's funny. Look at some of these numbers. Sam Darnold, produced 9 points and had 2 turnovers in the playoffs, in the 24 playoffs. Jordan Love produced 10 points and had 3 turnovers. Justin Herbert produced 12 points and had 4 turnovers. Jared Goff has produced 31 points. He has 3 turnovers. Meanwhile, Brock Purdy has 1 interception in 6 career NFL playoff games. Brock's thrown 1 pick, and Goff, Herbert, Love, and Darnold combined for 12 turnovers in the playoffs thus far this year. Let's talk a little bit about Brock Purdy. I've said in the past that I believe Brock Purdy ultimately is going to get between 45 million and 55 million AAV. But I had a chance to talk to some people in the know on the contract talks a little bit today, and I kind of believe that Brock's probably going to get north of $60 million. To the people who are like, oh, man, the Niners can't build a talented roster, if they pay Brock $60 million. The Eagles are doing it. They're paying their quarterback a lot of money, and they got one of the deepest stacked depth charts of any team in pro football. So it can be done. It can be done. It's imperative that you draft well. I mean, you have to draft well. Howie Roseman has drafted well. John Lynch drafted well last year. He just didn't draft well the 3 previous years. If the Niners are going to pay Brock Purdy big money and they're going to contend, John's got to draft going forward like he did in 2024. As far as a timeline on these contract talks, Brock's got a contract for this year. So it's kind of incumbent on the 49ers to go to Brock's agent and hammer out a deal. If, the Niners say they want to get a deal done this offseason. Brock has said he would love to get a deal done, and he doesn't want to see, really drag on. It could happen at any point. In my opinion, the Niners cannot let this drag into training camp. Nobody's ever won a Super Bowl in a year when their starting quarterback held out of training camp. He's got to be there in training camp. Niners can't have him on a long holdout like they did with Ayuk or Trent Williams. One interesting note, if you look up Kyle Strongen, who's the agent for Brock Purdy, he works for a company called Range Sports out of Nashville. And according to his online bio, Strongen actually used to work inside the 49er organization in player personnel as a scouting assistant in like 2008 and 2009 under Mike Nolan and Mike Singletary during that era or those 2 eras of 49er football. So there's no doubt that Kyle Strongen has relationships. He probably knows Jed. He probably knows Parag. He probably knows people in the Niner front office. I don't know what it's going to do. I don't know if that's going to help him get a deal done, but he knows them. They know him. He's worked there, so there's a relationship there. Just something to take note of. Matt Maiocco stopped by earlier today on Murph and Marcus on KMBR and talked a little bit about the Niners in the coaching search. He says, in Matt's mind, it's Robert Saleh or bust. And according to Matt, he says it's been in a holding pattern. He said the 49ers are operating on Robert Saleh's timetable, that they clearly want Robert Saleh. If it's not Saleh, they'll go on to number 2 on their list, but we don't know who that is. Is it Brandon Staley? Is it Gus Bradley? We really don't know. Jeff Ulbrich is gone. Lou Anarumo gone. Dennis Allen gone. They're all hired elsewhere. The Niners have interviewed Deshae Townsend as well as Robert Saleh. And, as I said before, I mean, nobody's going to keep a coordinator job over a head coaching job. Head coach job is going to pay you $7 to $15 million per year. The offensive or defensive coordinator job is going to pay you $3 to $7 million per year. Maiocco was asked about Pete Carroll, and he believes Pete Carroll would only take a head coaching job at the age of 73. He said he'd be surprised if he took a defensive coordinator job. A lot of people are still expecting Pete Carroll to possibly wind up in Las Vegas with the Raiders. And then Matt also acknowledged that the Niners front office is publicly going to be, raked over the coals if they hire Brandon Staley, probably unfairly, to be completely honest, because Brandon Staley had 1 year as a defensive coordinator, and his team was number 1 in the NFL in both points and yards. So, if people are really hyper negative on Brandon Staley, I think I would push back and say, hey, what exactly is your discontent of Staley based on? I'm not saying he's the best option, but let's not pretend that he's an embarrassment. You don't get to be the number one defense in football accidentally. He was when he is 1 year as a defensive coordinator, they were number one in the league against as far as yards against and points allowed. So that's pretty good. That's pretty good. Number one is hard to do. Now, he then got hired away. He didn't have a great run. He went for it a bunch of times on fourth down with the Chargers. They gave up 60 some odd points to the Raiders in a game, and then he got fired. He spent this year coaching cornerbacks, but who knows more about Brandon Staley? People on Twitter or Demo Lenore? And Lenore told us earlier this year that he thinks of Brandon Staley as like a Kyle Shanahan on defense, that he thinks he's a genius, that he thinks he's really, really smart. So Demo's not one to just butter your muffin for no reason. If he's touting Brandon Staley as really smart, then Brandon Staley's really smart. So I think everybody ought to just kind of pump the brakes on the Brandon Staley is the end of the world will come to an end if the Niners hire Brandon Staley as a defensive coordinator. I think people probably ought to take a second look at Brandon Staley and judge him a little bit more fairly for his full accomplishments as opposed to just, hey, you know what, the Raiders scored 60 on his defense with the Chargers. Also, interesting note, Dallas Cowboys beat writer from The Athletic, Joe Machota, says that Jerry Jones has spoken informally to Pete Carroll about Dallas's head coaching opening. He says Dallas is likely to hire Brian Schottenheimer as the head coach, not Kellen Moore. So that's kind of interesting because Schottenheimer, I don't believe, was considered a candidate anywhere else. But, Dallas has got their own deal, right? If you're going to coach in Dallas, we all know the prerequisites. You got to be okay with Jerry and his kids having a huge say. And if you're not going to get the job, if you're not going to get a head coaching job, then you know what? Guess what? You have to play nice with Jerry to get the Cowboy job. And it sounds like Brian Schottenheimer is willing to do exactly that. Where Kellen Moore probably has options. Kellen Moore is the Philadelphia Eagles offensive coordinator at this point. They potentially are going to the Super Bowl. They may win it. He may have many opportunities that are far better than working for Jerry and his kids. But Brian Schottenheimer is not, as coveted at this point, and that may be Schottenheimer's way to get that job. So that's an interesting name to watch for. Mike Silver stopped by on KMBR, said, man, Pete Carroll definitely wants to coach again. Said that he spoke with Robert Saleh, who's on his way to Jacksonville on Friday to interview for a second interview. And then Mike made the point that he feels like Kyle Shanahan seems to want to stay with their 4-3, wide 9, heavy cover 3 on the back end. That seems to be where Kyle Shanahan, or what Kyle Shanahan wants out of his defense. He says he's open to a switch of a scheme, but it doesn't sound like he is. Couple other thoughts on the Brock Purdy contract talks. Brock says he wants the extension talks to be drama-free. He prefers a quick resolution so he can 100% focus on phase 1 of the 49ers offseason program. John Lynch said that he wants the Niners to get a deal done ASAP with Brock. He says Brock's our guy. The Niners do not want to kick this can down the road. They want to get it done this year. Now, ESPN says that Brock's contract extension is the Niners' top offseason priority, but ESPN's writer Ben Solak is predicting that Purdy is going to be a training camp holdout. He's not a free agent until 2026. He has a contract. Of course, the Niners backslid this year. They went 6-11. The question I would say is the timeline on the Brock contract. I mean, free agency begins in the middle of March. If you're not going to have Brock, you're probably going to need to go into the free agent market and sign somebody. So that could be a deadline. OTAs begin in the middle of April. That could be a deadline. Training camp begins in the middle of July. So, I mean, theoretically, that could be their deadline. So we don't really know the time frame. But the one thing I think for sure is that the Niners can't let this drag into July. I mean, Purdy cannot miss OTAs. He cannot miss mandatory minicamp. He can't miss any of training camp, or the season is at risk. Name me the team that won the Super Bowl with a quarterback that held out into training camp. I'll wait. You can stop thinking because it's never happened. Purdy needs field reps. He needs to get on the field with Ricky Pearsall, with Jacob Cowing, with the rookie receivers they draft, with the rookie tight ends they draft, with Brandon Ayuk when Ayuk gets healthy, and he needs to build a rapport that was a whole lot stronger with his receivers than what he had this year. So, message to the Niner brass, man, you better have some urgency in your approach to this contract negotiation. And I'll say this, the timing means almost more than the value. If the Niners sign just a mediocre deal from the team's perspective, but they get it done in March and April, that is vastly superior to a bargain deal that the team gets in August or September. When this gets done matters more than how it gets done and at what price point it gets done. There are people that will make you believe that the price point means everything. In a cap sport, I understand that approach. But if you're trying to win this year, and no quarterback's ever won a Super Bowl while holding out, you got to get this thing done. You can't let it be like Ayuk's situation. Cut the best deal you can make, but do it in March or April. Do not wait until late July or August. Do not wait until Brock Purdy's holding out. I don't think that's in anybody's best interest. So it is interesting. I think Kyle Strong, the agent for Brock, probably has a pretty good perspective on what Brock needs because he's got a big football background. Kyle played ball at Oklahoma, I believe. He was a former coordinator of football ops at University of Tennessee. He's a former director of football ops at Ole Miss. This is just according to his bio on LinkedIn. So we'll see. He used to rep Bradley Pinion. He currently reps both Colton McKivitz and Brandon Allen. So we'll see if the Niners can get this ship to shore and make this deal happen. It's important that they do. A couple other interesting notes. The 4 49ers were listed on the PFF free agent rankings. And it's interesting where they rank these guys because they didn't just rank them, they also projected contracts. So they have Mooney as the Mooney Ward, 13th best free agent. Dre Greenlaw, 18th best free agent, regardless of position. Talanoa Hufanga, 23rd best free agent, and Aaron Banks, 73rd best free agent. They say Banks is going to get a contract at about $8.5 million, which would be 22nd among guards. They're projecting 3 years, $25.5 million. I think that's going to be too rich for the Niners' blood. I think he's probably going to leave. They say Hufanga is going to be a 2-year, $25 million contract, $12.5 million AAV, which will be 9th among active safeties. He played just 308 snaps this year because of injuries. I think that's probably too rich for the Niners. I think Hufanga is probably moving on. Mooney Ward, they say, is the 13th best free agent, and he's going to get a 3-year, $43.5 million deal, so $14.5 million AAV, which would be 14th among cornerbacks in the NFL. I think that's probably too rich for the Niners. So I think Mooney's gone. I think Hufanga's gone. I think Banks is gone. But interestingly enough, the 49er free agent that PFF kind of projects reasonable dollar figure was Dre Greenlaw. They say he's going to get a 1-year deal for $6 million, which would be the 29th highest paid linebacker in pro football. If that is actually what his market is, get it done right now. Get it done. Dre Greenlaw for 1 year at $6 million, I think would be a good deal. I'll take that right now. Long-term deals, I'm not as excited about, but I would definitely take that short-term deal if I were the 49ers. By the way, PFF's highest graded 49er free agent, according to them, is Jalen Moore, the 27-year-old offensive tackle. Moore allowed only 1 sack and 10 pressures in 154 pass block opportunities this year. He had a 70.1 PFF run blocking grade, only 831 career snaps, so he hasn't played a lot. 55 games over his 4-year career, only 12 starts. But they say Jalen Moore is the highest graded 49ers. So I would expect the Niners to try to retain Jalen Moore on offense and maybe Dre Greenlaw on defense. Couple other notes. Spot Track predicts Brock Purdy's contract will be 4 years, $194 million, with $100 million guaranteed. So that's $48.5 million per year. I kind of think that's the floor. I don't think it's going to be lower than that, but I think it won't be any lower than that. But I think it's going to be much higher than that. As I just told you, I think he's going to get paid north of $60 million. He set the franchise record in 2023 with 4,280 passing yards. He won an NFC championship game. He's got multiple playoff wins. He's probably their hardest working player. I don't think there's any doubt that Brock Purdy's going to get compensated at a very high level. Even this year, with the Niners falling to 6-11, he still threw for 28. 28. I think it was what. It was 3,864 yards this year, 20 touchdowns, 12 picks, 96.1 rating. So his numbers weren't as good this year. But you know what? I think he's done enough to justify a top 10 contract. Now the question is he done enough to justify the top contract? And that very much is up in the air, and ultimately that's going to be decided in these negotiations between his agent and the 49ers. And PFF calls the Niners the best landing spot for the Bears free agent offensive guard Tevin Jenkins. I love Jenkins at Oklahoma State. He's now 26. He had a 77.3 PFF grade. He's had some nagging injuries throughout the year, but 75.8 PFF pass blocking grade was his career high. He allowed just a 3.8% pressure rate. That was his career high. And Tevin Jenkins, he signed a 4-year, $8.3 million deal that's set to expire. I don't think the Niners are probably going to play in the free agent market that much on the offensive line. I think they'll probably look to the draft to fill those needs. But Jenkins is a good player. And if they wanted to have Jenkins, at guard, that would be a nice ad. He's a bulldozer. He's an absolute bulldozer in the run game. He struggled a little bit in his first year coming out of Oak State, but man, he's put it together since. And you're talking about a real road grader. You're talking about a guy who can really open up some run lanes. All right, as far as the Jaguars story being the story of the day, Liam Cohen is in Jacksonville and may wind up being the head coach of the Jaguars after all. Will join me tonight at 6:30 or 6 p.m. for Niners Nightly on KMBR. At 6:30, John Shipley is going to stop by. He is the Jaguars beat writer from Jaguars on SI. He hosts Jaguars on SI. John Shipley is a great follow on Twitter. He's going to stop by at 6:30, and we're going to talk about what's going on. What is going on in Jacksonville? Are they going to offer this job to Trent Baalke? Are they going to offer this job to Liam Cohen? I'll say this: to me, the win is if the Jaguars offer it to Liam Cohen right away, and Robert Saleh comes to the 49ers. If I said Trent Baalke, I always confuse my Trent Baalkes and my Robert Salehs. But Robert Saleh, the best news would be Robert Saleh does not get the Jacksonville head coaching job. It goes to Liam Cohen right away, and Salah signs with the 49ers as a defensive coordinator within 2 or 3 days. That's the best news. But what's possible? The possibility does exist because Kellen Moore is out there, because Joe Brady is out there, because those guys still could be candidates. They may not, if one of those guys, if the Eagles and the Bills advance to the Super Bowl, we're talking about, this not reaching a conclusion until after the Super Bowl, which would mean the 49ers would have to wait somewhere between 2 to 2.5 weeks before they could get their defensive coordinator. And I don't know how long they want to wait. So what's in the Niners' best interest is either for Saleh to get the Jaguar job and then they can move on to plan B, or for Liam Cohen to get the Jaguar job and then they can move on to plan, to signing Robert Saleh, which would be plan A, it sounds like. The worst case scenario is that you know what, the Jaguars, hey, you know what, they really have an interest in Kellen Moore, and the Eagles go to the Super Bowl, and you don't get this, you don't get a resolution on who your 49er defensive coordinator is going to be until the middle of February. So, you could, and that would delay your offseason and your evaluation and everything that goes into, you want to hit the ground running. The Niners have to have a great offseason. They got to have a great free agent signing period. They have to have a great draft. They all have to be on the right page. They've got to get ready for next year to be their go year, because there's a lot of expectations and there's a lot of people expecting the Niners to bounce back. So the last thing they want to do is see this defensive coordinator hiring process drift into the middle of February. So whether it's Liam Cohen going to Jacksonville and Robert Saleh's coming to the Niners, or Robert Saleh's going to Jacksonville and the Niners have to go find plan B at defensive coordinator, I think both those options are better than, hey, the Jags still want to talk to Kellen Moore. And, hey, 49ers, I know you want Robert Saleh, but it's January 23rd, and you probably aren't going to be able to hire him until February 15th. I don't know if that's a good situation for the 49ers. All right, that's going to do it for the update. And now a word from our sponsor, Aura. Have you ever typed your name on the internet and seen all of your private information is online? Are you tired of receiving tons of spam calls from random numbers? Are you receiving more and more of these as time has gone on? Well, that's where Aura, the sponsor of today's show, can really help you out. Data brokers sell your information to scammers and spammers and anyone else who may want to target you. Your full name, your email, your home address, all your records, your health records, who your relatives are. It's all out there. That's why I've been using Aura. Aura shows me which data brokers are selling my information and automatically submits opt-out requests for me. Cleaning up my information not only helps reduce the amount of spam I get, but it also protects me from hackers who could use the information to help them access my social media accounts, my bank accounts, or any other sensitive information. Aura also does so much more to protect me and my family from online threats I can't see. I get other features like antivirus, VPN, password management, parental controls, identity theft insurance, and more without having to download several different apps. It's really easy to set up, and best of all, I get everything at one affordable price. I value my privacy, and I value yours. You can go to the link in the description to start your 2-week free trial. And thanks to Aura for being a proud sponsor of The Krug Show. Thanks to Pig and a Pickle for being the title sponsor of The Krug Show. Thanks to all of you guys for supporting The Krug Show on YouTube.